Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. In my last video, I put forward a new hypothesis that this strange character found on the famous Narmer Palette is in fact the oldest portrayal of the Sphinx in history, which, at the time when Narmer unified Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BC, was likely to be the most important monument in Lower Egypt, hence its inclusion on the palette. Although the early dynastic history of Egypt is no way clear-cut, and the finds from this time are few and far between, I have since stumbled on this artifact, known as the Label of Horus Narmer, with a large head displayed in the bottom right-hand corner. Could this be another depiction of the pre-dynastic Sphinx head? Narmer's successor is believed to be King Ahar, and after looking through art associated with him, there is yet another potential Sphinx head, this time on the famous Nakeda label. In the bottom right hand corner, we see four people stood in front of the same giant head with human features looking eastwards. Early dynastic art isn't greatly understood and has numerous interpretations, and the symbols displayed may have had different literal, symbolic, or esoteric meanings. This is certainly true regarding the Narmer Palette, although I do believe its primary focus is Narmer's union with, or conquest over, Lower Egypt. I certainly believe that the palette shows the Sphinx, but the absence of the Giza pyramids leads me to believe that they were not yet built, because surely you would display these incredible grand structures on your artwork if you had just conquered the land in which they reside. I still believe that the Great Pyramid was the brainchild of Narmer and the conquering Nakeda III culture from the south, but in my opinion, and from the fact that pottery has been discovered, there must have been a pre-dynastic settlement on the Giza plateau. After once again looking at the Narmer Palette for clues, like the strange image that I've interpreted as an early representation of the Sphinx, another part caught my eye. On the opposite side of the palette, at the very bottom, there is a depiction of a bull charging towards what experts interpret as a fortress or settlement of Lower Egypt, trampling over an enemy as it smashes through the defensive wall. Throughout Egyptian history, bulls have symbolised the strength of the king in victory, as seen with the Horus name of Amenhotep III, which was Horus' victorious bull who appears in life. On the Narmer Palette, the king is seen smiting his enemy, and he is wearing a bull's tail with bull heads hanging from his belt. Therefore, the image of the bull on the opposite side is clearly a depiction of King Narmer, destroying a fortress in Lower Egypt, trampling the enemies in his path. But do we know what this fortress could be? Is it a specific settlement, or is it just symbolic? Major pre-dynastic fortresses, enclosures or settlements in Lower Egypt are quite rare in the archaeological record, but this large structure, surrounded by a curved wall, has a very distinctive shape, a shallow pyramidal base and a flat top, with two turrets protruding from the roof. Some believe that this pyramidal structure is actually a hieroglyph, showing the name of the settlement, but with the current level of knowledge, this symbol is unreadable. But I think that this is simply because it probably isn't a hieroglyph at all, but a depiction of the fortress itself. If the other side of the Narmer Palette depicts the Sphinx, which yes is my assumption that I discussed in my previous video, then it is also safe to assume that this fortress could be located at the same locality, the Giza Plateau. Maybe this was a key location in the events that led to the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, possibly the place of the battle that the palette alludes to. So, if there is a fortress with a pyramidal base on the Giza Plateau at the time of Narmer's conquest, where is it? You could argue that it was the Great Pyramid, located close to the Sphinx, but as outlined in a previous video, it is highly unlikely that the Great Pyramid was a pre-dynastic structure. For a start, we know that the Great Pyramid's associated quarries do not show any signs of water erosion. Also, for the rainwater runoff to erode the western wall of the Sphinx enclosure, the quarries for the pyramid could not have been present, as they would have deflected the flow of surface water away from the Sphinx. And, as Colin Reeder and Robert Schock have shown, these must have been the quarries for the bulk of the pyramid limestone, due to rock-type comparisons that have been conducted at microscopic level. The stonework of the Great Pyramid also differs considerably to other clearly pre-dynastic structures in Egypt, but one Giza pyramid certainly does show evidence of a potentially pre-dynastic origin. The Menkaure Pyramid, the smallest of the three, is, in my opinion, the oldest. Unlike the other Giza pyramids, the lowermost 16 courses of casing stone were originally made from granite, with the upper portion being cased with Tura limestone that we know covered the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre. As some of the granite casing stones look to have an unfinished state, archaeologists say that the pyramid was incomplete, but this isn't necessarily the case. The granite casing stones bear a striking similarity to the pre-Inca stonework seen in Cuzco, Peru, which clearly isn't unfinished, but is a distinct type of stonework and gives a clear and little understood connection between ancient South America and ancient Egypt. But just how ancient is this stonework? Researcher Brian Forster believes that this type of stonework could be far more ancient than many of the ancient Egyptian stone structures, certainly older than the conventional date given to the pyramids of Egypt, and I completely agree. To me, this stonework implies one of two things. Either the first 16 courses of the pyramid were part of an earlier structure that was built upon and reworked into a pyramid at a later date, or this pyramid was designed differently to the rest, so that the bottom 16 courses had to be made of a different type of stone. The way these casing stones are cut and arranged, being irregular shapes and sizes, fitted together with amazing accuracy just like we see in ancient Peru, leads me to believe they are from a far more ancient stone structure, and are certainly built by a different culture. The Tura limestone casing stones seen at Giza are more regular in shape and size, and are believed to have had their flat finish before being put into position. Yes, I know they are two very different types of stone, but there seems to be two very distinct types of monument building on this one pyramid, something we don't see on the Great Pyramid, for example. And, if only one culture was responsible, why bother with the granite? Why not just finish this one smaller pyramid with Tura limestone, which is a far easier task? Interestingly, there is water erosion in the Menkaure Pyramid Quarry, which is located close to that pyramid, as well as flood damage in the Menkaure Valley Temple, far less intense than the erosion that we see on the walls of the Sphinx enclosure, but it may mean that this structure harks back to an earlier, wetter age. In fact, at Giza, as John Anthony West pointed out in his studies of the necropolis, there are clearly two stages of building at a number of sites, such as the Sphinx Valley Temple and the Khafre Valley Temple, not to mention the recarving of the head of the Sphinx. Furthermore, extensive field work from geologist Colin Reeder also proves that Khafre's causeway is one of the first things on the plateau, predating the reigns of King Khufu, Khafre and Menkaure. We must remember that megalithic activity in ancient Egypt goes back to at least 5000 BC, as seen by the structures preserved at Nabda Playa, as well as the Sphinx itself, which is certainly more than 10,000 years old. Megalithic structures in pre-dynastic times are therefore certainly not impossible, and the reason they are so few could well be because the stone was reused by dynastic Egyptians, or the sites were transformed into dynastic monuments. One thing is for sure, the orthodox Egyptological dating is wrong. Khafre's mortuary temple and this causeway even predate himself and Khufu, as does the Sphinx and its Valley Temple. There are clearly two distinct phases of building on the Menkaure Pyramid, but also the Khafre Pyramid. The second largest of the three employs two radically different styles of masonry as well. The lower courses of the northeast corner are made from cyclopean blocks, which are massive irregular blocks of stone, similar to the core masonry of the Sphinx Valley Temple, and they are far more refined than the smaller, more typical blocks that are piled on top to create the pyramid. This is also seen in places, but less obviously, in the limestone of the Menkaure Pyramid, in places that would have been covered by the more ancient granite casing stone. The Giza necropolis is far older than we are told. I'm not saying that the pyramids themselves were pre-dynastic structures. Geological evidence says that this is unlikely, and radiocarbon dating of the organic matter found within all three pyramids, although having large error margins, points to a construction date of around 3100 BC. What we do know is that there is, at the very least, evidence of an ancient pre-dynastic structure at the northeastern corner of the Khafre Pyramid. And, due to the granite casing stones, the Menkaure Pyramid may have been the first large structure on the plateau, a 16-course high pyramidal structure with a flat top. Together with the Sphinx Valley Temple, the Khafre Valley Temple, and the Khafre Causeway, before Narmer invaded Lower Egypt, Giza was already an established settlement. I would hazard a guess that the Menkaure and Khafre pyramids were built over older structures, whilst the Great Pyramid may have been built over an ancient ram pump water feature, which, as shown in my previous videos, didn't need the overlying pyramid to function, just the subterranean chambers, shafts and tunnels. These Great Pyramid subterranean shafts and chambers are certainly cruder than the rest of the construction, and this could be because they are far more ancient. Paradoxically, by the time Narmer arrived at Giza, the structure on the smallest Menkaure pyramid footprint was probably the most prominent. There was then a lesser structure made of megalithic blocks in the northeastern footprint of the Khafre pyramid, and the Great Pyramid may have been little more than a shallow hill that had been worked to create a primitive, yet, for the time, advanced form of water pump. When all this activity dates to is unknown. The Sphinx Valley Temple must be the same age as the Sphinx, indicating that the history of the Giza Plateau goes back many thousands of years. The Giza landscape could well have been settled by numerous cultures throughout the course of history, who continually developed their landscape, turning lions into humans and ancient fortresses into pyramids. To me, this image on the Narmer Palette may well represent Giza, an important pre-dynastic city in the north, with its central focal point being a pyramidal structure with a flat top. A structure that would one day become the Pyramid of Menkaure. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.